Welcome back to Sika Strength. Welcome back to Sika Stan. Today we're talking about developing speed for rugby forwards. The basis of this is that bigger, more muscled athletes will inevitably be slowed down by having to carry more muscle mass around the field. But the good news is there is a well-refined system through which we can get bigger, heavier athletes to move faster. To begin, speed training for field athletes should be thought of as a triangle, with all three sides being equally important and any omission of one of the three sides being detrimental. These three distinct factors are power production, running mechanics, and finally work capacity. This idea of concurrent focus is particularly poignant for bigger athletes whose mass is essential to on-field performance. To dig a bit deeper, what do we mean by power, technique, and capacity? Well, let's start off with power. In many sporting contexts, power is misused as a term of collision energy or strength or high levels of force. But power, simply put, is the rate at which work can be done. It is not how strong you are or how fast you are, but rather how much heavy work can you do very quickly. To make it even more simple, imagine two athletes. One squats 100 kilos for 5 reps in 8 seconds. The second athlete does 100 kilos for 5 reps in 4 seconds. The second athlete then is twice as powerful as the first, so the weight matters, the distance you're moving the weight through matters, and the time it takes to do it matters. Watt is the unit of power, and so the wattage you read on your rower or bike erg is calculated by the amount of force you're putting through the machine in a certain time. If you take a litre of water and lift it 1 metre into the air in 1 second, then you have produced 1 watt of power. If you did it in half a second, you would have produced 2 watts of power, and if you'd lifted 2 litres of water in half a second, you would have produced 4 watts of power. Okay, I hope this makes it clear to you what power output really is. If you want to be large and in charge on the field, you must think about power output in the gym. Many of the big units like to focus on heavier weights, which in turn move more slowly. This is absolutely fine in an off-season period of training, but when you're trying to move fast, think about optimizing your power output during squats, deadlifts, and presses. So, the next question we usually get at this point is what weight, sets, and reps should I be doing? Well, there is a test known as power profiling, which could be done easily using some sort of velocity tracking unit and some very basic maths, but you really don't need to get too caught up in that. Generally speaking, it'll be around 50 to 70% of your 1RM for 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps. Moving through these rep ranges over a course of a training cycle and including standard programmed progressions. For the more strength trained athletes, particularly weightlifting athletes, you'll see these numbers much higher, up to and exceeding 80% of 1RM, but generally speaking, for rugby players with some experience of strength training, about 50 to 70% is a good bracket in which to focus. Right, second thing is running mechanics. This always goes overlooked. As coaches, we see nothing of athletes being on the pitch 4 sessions per week, with a massive amount of running mileage and sprinting being done in each of those, but rarely, if ever, do we see structured sprint training and programming being done. So, where should you look to? Well, I'm going to make it easy today. There's 5 things to watch for. I would recommend videoing some 20 or 30 meter sprints this evening or tomorrow and watching those videos back with these 5 things in mind. Posture and position. If I was to point out the single biggest error in field sports athletes sprinting, it is that they do not lean far enough forward and they don't stay forward long enough. I know having an upright torso makes it much easier to look forward and scan the line in front of you, and it fatigues your back a bit less, but standing straight up and trying to sprint fast is absolute dog shit. You should essentially never be standing straight up while sprinting on a rugby pitch as a forward, unless you've made a break from the halfway line and reached full stride. But as a front row, let's be realistic, you're going to spend most of your time accelerating short distances, so lean forward, get your head out in front of your knees, and fucking stay there. Things like falling starts and 3-point stances are great ways to get more comfortable getting into and staying in that inclined position. Next, stride length and frequency. Think about shorter, sharper strides at the start, then allow some lengthening of that stride as you get later on into it. Speed ladders can be your best friend here if you're trying to work on this. Start pretty simple, work on that lower limb dexterity, and then start to do more complex work on the ladders. Even having a teammate holding you back with a heavy band around your hips is a really good way to allow you to purely focus on that stride frequency without risking falling over. Generally speaking, if we're going from a standing start, I like people to focus on the initial 10 or 15 steps or strides in that initial acceleration phase of the sprint. Number 3, ground contact time. Now, I know wet pitches, heavy legs, and a backline with a penchant for knocking on the ball will all lead to it being difficult to not just plant your feet, plod along, and take longer strides. But having your foot on the ground for less time will make a huge difference, and cycling those feet faster also helps massively with agility. Generally speaking, bigger dudes are always going to have too much ground contact time per stride, and so you should be aiming to get this down as much as possible. Skipping, short hurdles, and basic plyometrics, focusing on short, sharp rebounds are your best friend here. Arm swing and torso rotation is next. So arm drive, to be fair, is usually quite good in field sports athletes, keeping that 90 at the elbow, going fully through that cheek to cheek swing, but the same can't be said for torso rotation. As we run, our hips are rotating as we go through the stride, and in order to stay facing straight forward, we pump our arms and rotate at the hip. When athletes gain size, they also tend to become more rigid around the midline, which can lead to a clunky and laboured upper body style. To be honest, there isn't a massive amount you can do here, but ensure your hip flexors are getting some mobility work and TLC on a daily basis, and keep an eye on any soreness or fatigue developing in the lower back during hard running sessions. This is an immediate red flag. Finally then, the fifth aspect of sprint technique is knee and hip drive. Knees coming up to a high frontal position and the hips aggressively fully extending at the end of our stride. Both of these end ranges tend to become shortened once the legs and hips start to accumulate more mass, and so some direct work can be vital. The use of things like hanging knee raises and reverse hypers can really help here. Even as little as twice per week will make a huge difference, but once again, it should definitely be combined with some technically focused sprint drills. Right, so we've covered power production and sprinting mechanics, but what about work capacity? There is a common misconception out there that sprint training is very easy sessions where any sign of fatigue means the session should stop instantly. And yeah, look, that's completely true. If you're a track and field athlete, if you're a sprint focused athlete, you've done all of the hard work in the off season, you've built up that work capacity, and you should be doing those speed focused, very refined, very short, sharp sessions. But to be honest, many bigger athletes will be slowing down over the course of a game or a hard training session due to the fact that they're not actually fit enough for the repeated efforts, rather than lacking any power or technical prowess. If this sounds familiar and you're really struggling with speed towards the end of a game, then try this. Twice per week, either before training, maybe in the morning, or after training before going to bed, do 30 minutes on an exercise bike. Use this time to watch TV, do emails, whatever. Keep your heart rate at or above 135 beats per minute, and after 3 weeks, increase it to 45 minutes. Stick to this for 6 weeks and see just how much faster you feel at the end of a match or a hard pitch session. Now, I know there's a small catch-22 here. In order to be effective in your position, you must maintain a certain body weight, and by no means do I want you to be dropping body weight over the course of these 6 weeks. What you must do is be replacing the calories you're burning on the bike or the rowing machine. So keep an eye on your weight. Don't allow that to drop down. If it is dropping down slightly, I wouldn't be massively concerned, but certainly be cognizant of not dropping body mass immediately. If you're running out of time during the week to do training and do that extra cardio work, then shorter, sharper interval sessions can be beneficial, but they certainly have a bigger impact. Start off with the low-hanging fruit and go from there. So in the same way a fire needs oxygen and fuel and heat to stay lit, big players need good power production, sharp technique, and big work capacity to move as fast as possible on the field. If you'd like to check out our in-season rugby program, please see the link below. It's 2 gym sessions per week, well-refined sessions to keep your power outputs as high as possible and maintain as much strength and muscle mass over the course of the season as is realistic. Or maybe you're in the off-season, so check out the off-season strength and hypertrophy program, pack on plenty of extra kilos on your squat and some extra muscle mass over the course of 4 or 8 weeks. And please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.